Have you ever experienced this? Na you thought you had already moved on from something. Maybe may painful season sa past mo, a mistake, a certain behavior, a version of yourself you no longer like. Or maybe it's an emotion na lumalabas pa rin from time to time. Jealousy, fear, neediness, anger, insecurity, loneliness, shame, o kung ano pa man yan. And when it happens, there's this immediate reaction inside na, I shouldn't be feeling this anymore. Akala ko okay na ako. I'm way past this. I've already healed. I've already overcome this. I'm better than this now. Sounds familiar ba? So, instead of listening, we resist it. We push it away, judge it, hide it, minimize it, or try to outgrow it mentally. But what if the very thing you're resisting is the thing asking to be acknowledged? And what if healing does not happen through rejection, but through honest awareness and acceptance? Most of us were taught that when life gets harder, the answer is to think harder. But many of the biggest breakthroughs in my life didn't come from thinking more. They came from understanding the mind and learning how to quiet it. If you're a business owner, leader, or professional dealing with stress, uncertainty, and the challenges that come with growth, you're in the right place. In this podcast, I share realizations about life, work, and the mind, and how quieting the mind helps us think more clearly, make better decisions, and take focused, effective action. Welcome to Realizations with Clarissa. One of the things I've noticed in coaching is this. Sometimes the parts of ourselves that create the most inner tension are not necessarily the worst parts. Often, they are the most rejected parts. The parts na kinakahiya natin. The parts we no longer want associated with our identity. The parts we think disqualify us from being strong, mature, spiritual, successful, or emotionally healthy. And because we reject them, they stay hidden. But hidden doesn't mean healed. In fact, many times, the more rejected a part becomes, the more suffering it quietly creates underneath. Parang batang naghahanap ng atensyon. At imbes na alamin mo kung ano kailangan niya, pinalabas mo siya at nasa labas lang siya ng pintuan the whole time. Because what we suppress does not disappear. What we exclude does not experience the healing it needs. It often waits in the background, showing up through stress, overthinking, defensiveness, emotional reactions, inner pressure, exhaustion, numbness, disconnection, shame, low confidence, and so on. And sometimes even through physical tension in the body. Sometimes it feels like there's something holding you back na di mo maintindihan kung ano. And what makes it more painful is this. Many high-performing people become very good at performing wellness externally, while rejecting parts of themselves internally. You can sound wise and spiritual, function well, help people, be productive, be disciplined, and still have parts inside that feel unwanted. And usually, those parts are not asking to control your life. They're simply asking to be seen. I remember coaching someone who had a very emotional realization during one of our sessions. He wanted to grow his business and personal habits. And while trying to understand what's holding him back, what emerged was that for many years, he carried shame about a certain part of his past. A version of himself he no longer liked. And intellectually, he thought he had already moved on. Na-improve niya na buhay niya, he became more responsible, more mature, more self-aware. But during coaching, he realized something very important. That part of him was never actually welcomed back. It was almost like the story of the prodigal son. Except in this case, the prodigal son was left outside the door. That part of him was still excluded, still unwanted, still carrying shame. And what he realized was all these years he had been trying to become a better version of himself while secretly rejecting the wounded part that actually needed compassion. He thought healing meant yun, distansyahin yung sarili niya from that part. But healing was actually asking him to acknowledge it, to see it, to stop abandoning it internally. And when that realization happened, it became deeply emotional for him. Because for the first time, that rejected part finally felt welcomed home. Not celebrated, not justified, but accepted as part of his humanity. And something softened. Nakita ko sa buong katawan niya. The inner fight relaxed, the shame reduced, there was enormous relief, and he described it like becoming whole again. Like the missing part of him finally had permission to come home and heal. But what was also interesting was this. After that session, he didn't just feel emotional relief. He also felt more energized, more motivated. Mas gumaan yung pakiramdam niya internally. And because of that, it became easier for him to take action again. Because before that, a lot of his energy was unconsciously being used to suppress, reject, and distance himself from that part of his past. It takes a lot of energy to suppress something that's actually there. There's inner resistance happening underneath everything. And inner resistance is exhausting. It affects focus, decision-making, creativity, confidence. And even simple actions can start feeling heavier when there's unresolved inner conflict underneath. So when that rejected part was finally acknowledged and welcomed home, it was almost like he recovered energy that had been trapped in self-rejection for years. And this is something many people don't realize. Sometimes performance issues are not only about discipline, productivity, or strategy. Sometimes the mind is tired from carrying an internal war. And honestly, this is something many people experience without realizing it. Sometimes we think healing means, oh, I should never feel this again. But real healing often looks more like I no longer need to reject myself for feeling this. And that's very different because resistance creates inner conflict. Na you feel sadness, then you judge yourself for being sad. You feel insecure, then shame yourself for feeling insecure. You feel angry, then become afraid of your anger. So now you're not only carrying the original emotion, you're also carrying the rejection of the emotion, the rejection of your human nature. And that creates additional suffering. And over time, that inner conflict affects performance more than people realize. You can still function, you can still work hard, you can still achieve, but internally there's friction. More hesitation, more emotional exhaustion, more overthinking, less mental space and energy. And sometimes people think they're lazy, unmotivated, or lacking discipline, when actually part of their energy is just being consumed by the ongoing effort to reject parts of themselves. At kapag less ang inner war, there's a sense of wholeness. There's naturally more energy available for focus, creativity, connection, leadership, and things that matter most. This is why awareness matters so much. Hindi yung awareness na endlessly analyze yourself, but yung awareness na allows honesty. Because healing cannot fully happen in exclusion. The parts of us that are denied cannot fully heal when they are abandoned inside our own mind. And I think this is especially important for high performers because many capable people unconsciously create an identity around being, I'm better now, stronger now, calmer now, more evolved now. So when old emotions appear, they panic. Why is this still here? What's wrong with me? I thought I already dealt with this. I thought I'm over this. But healing is not always linear. Sometimes deeper layers appear because you now finally have the safety and awareness to meet them. Not because you failed, not because you went backwards, but because another part is ready to be seen. And sometimes what we truly need is not more self-improvement. Sometimes we need reconciliation within ourselves, a coming home, a willingness to stop abandoning parts of our humanity. And this does not mean acting out every emotion. It doesn't mean losing boundaries or accountability. Kasi acknowledgement is not the same as acting out based on your feelings. You can acknowledge fear without letting fear lead your life. You can acknowledge hurt without becoming trapped in victimhood. You can acknowledge anger without becoming destructive. But when emotions or parts are completely rejected, they often become louder underneath because excluded parts tend to seek expression. This is why compassion matters. Hindi yung soft, passive compassion, but honest compassion. The kind that says, yes, this is here. And I no longer need to hate myself for being human. Sometimes that simple shift changes everything because inner wholeness creates less inner war. And when there's less inner war, there's more energy available for life, better decisions, less emotional exhaustion, less hiding, less pretending, less pressure to maintain an image, more authenticity. And strangely enough, the parts we stop fighting often begin to soften naturally, hindi through force but through inclusion. That's also why awareness and acceptance are not just emotional or spiritual ideas because they affect real life. The way you lead, the way you work, how you make decisions, the way you show up in relationships and conversation. Because when the mind is no longer fighting itself all the time, there's more space for presence, action, and clarity. And not because perfect ka na, but because you became whole again. So today, I want to leave you with this reflection. Is there a part of you that you have been leaving outside the door? An emotion, a memory, a fear, a younger version of yourself? A struggle you thought you should have already overcome? Ano yan? And what would happen if instead of rejecting it, you became willing to honestly acknowledge it? Not to stay stuck there, but to allow healing through awareness, acceptance, and presence. Because sometimes the part of us that needs healing most is the part we've spent years trying not to see. If this episode resonated with you and you feel like there are deeper patterns, emotions, or inner conflicts affecting your peace, relationships, or performance, this is exactly the kind of work we gently explore in coaching. One-on-one coaching is the fastest path to transforming the deep-seated patterns that dictate how you show up both in your life and your work. Sometimes one honest conversation can help you see what's been hidden underneath the pressure, overthinking, or procrastination. And sometimes the thing that changes performance is not pushing yourself harder. Sometimes it's finally ending the inner war you've been carrying for years. If you'd like support, you can book a coaching consultation through the link in the description. And remember, healing is not always becoming someone new. Sometimes it's finally allowing the excluded parts of you to come home. Kung nakaka-relate ka sa episode na to, follow or subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss future episodes. And if you know someone who might find this helpful, feel free to share it with them. And thank you for spending this time with me. I'll see you in the next episode of Realizations with Clarissa. And keep building your mental fitness. Because a stronger mind helps us live better and work better.